If you watched my report 2 weeks ago, you will know that Bill C-11 did not pass, at least not yet, and there is hope that it won't. The Senate revisions are unacceptable to the Liberals, who have said they will not vote to approve it. Among others, senators made amendments to protect user-generated content. This, of course, was the true purpose of the bill, to give the government the right to censor user-generated content, such as, well, my show and others that dare to tell people the truth by putting platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, Liberty, and others under the jurisdiction of the CRTC. But remember that C-11 is just one strategy. Another is Bill C-18. C-18 is the flip side of C-11, where C-11 seeks to silence independent media. C-18 is designed to force social media platforms to heavily favor state-approved media. But it seems there's something our would-be government censors didn't take into account. Along with giving the CRTC unprecedented power of what information we can all access online, Bill C-18 would also require search engines like Google and social media platforms such as YouTube and Facebook to pay a portion of their revenues from Canadian news to the government. So now you can understand why Google is currently running a 5-week test that is blocking access to certain news sources for approximately 4% of Canadian users. Not as a test for cooperation with C-18 when it passes, but because they refuse to pay revenues to the Canadian government. And the government is so upset about this backfiring of their plan that on Tuesday of this week, according to Blacklock's reporter, the Commons Heritage Committee voted to summon executives from Google Canada to explain the company's test blocking of news websites. What's to explain? The government is trying to grab money that isn't theirs. Google will respond by simply cutting off the source. The upside to this is that with the possible failure of C-11, which will mean they won't be able to censor independent news sources such as mine, the enactment of C-18 as it stands could very well result in Google censoring mainstream media instead. In short, the exact opposite effect the government had planned. A rare instance of government incompetence working in our favor. As the influx of illegal immigrants continues, many of them at the Roxham Road border crossing, People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier posted this on Twitter this week.
Very disappointing. I wanted to go a little bit further at the Roxham Road, and we cannot. But these illegal migrants can cross our border illegally. So it's time to end that. We have the common sense solution. It's easy. We just have to have a fence over there and tell the RCMP to do their job and telling them, you don't have the right to come to our country by that road. If you want to come to Canada, use an official port of entry. That's what must happen. But actually, Trudeau, Poilievre, and all these establishment politicians, they are not ready for the real solution. They're saying, we must negotiate with the U.S. No, we are a sovereign country. That's it. We have borders, and everybody must respect our borders. That's it. That's all.
Perfect. Thank you, Max. Thank you for being...
Maxime, as much as I respect your values and your party, you either don't understand what is happening or you're playing politics because actually talking about what is happening would get you lumped in with us conspiracy theorists. The massive influx of immigrants to Canada and many European countries in recent years is a calculated and very intentional plan to destroy our national identities. Not long ago, I reported that currently 1 in 6 Canadian ridings are minority white. Courts in our country bias their decisions in favor of criminals who are not white. Laws are in place to restrict the free movement of Canadian citizens, while illegal immigrants who have been given free bus tickets by the state of New York stream into our country. Why? You all know that the WEF and their globalist partners want to establish a one-world government. In time, with the help of AIs and automated surveillance and control tools such as facial recognition, CBDCs, digital IDs, and social credit scores, central global governance will be possible. But in the interim, they still need national governments. National governments that they control by penetrating the cabinets. But the national governments are not the greatest obstacle to globalization. National identity is. It is very difficult to impose values on a people for whom those values are antithetical to their identity. For Canadians, for example, We believe in our rights to freedom of speech, religion, and bodily autonomy. But many of the immigrants coming into Canada come from countries where no such rights exist. They will easily embrace any level of tyranny as long as their living conditions are better than where they came from. Opening the floodgates at our borders is a major part of the globalist plan. It dilutes our Canadian identity until that phrase ceases to have any meaning and leaves us, as a nation, helpless to stand against the globalization agenda. Not everyone in our government is corrupt, though. There are still some good people there who are working in the interest of Canadians. People like Conservative MP Marilyn Gladue, who in November of 2021 saw the writing on the wall and tabled Bill C-228, a bill which is largely intended to protect private pension plans. As the globalists work toward destroying personal wealth and income in all its forms, we have already seen pension plans fail. Remember the collapse of Nortel in 2009 that cut deeply into the pensions of 20,000 Canadian Nortel employees. Then there were the thousands of Canadian Sears employees who saw their pensions slashed after their 2018 bankruptcy. Most pension plans leave workers with a subsistence-level living after retirement. Cutting those pensions by 30 to 50% leaves retirees living below the poverty line. Gladue tabled Bill C-228 in response to the plight of a neighbor who had worked for 30 years at the company and was now suffering extreme financial hardship due to the cutting of her pension. Now, Sears Canada employees are petitioning the Senate to pass C-228, which is currently awaiting its third and final reading by the Senate, already having passed the House late last year. While we can hope this bill will pass and that it will save some people from having their retirement income severely cut or erased completely, private pensions are not the only ones at risk. Pension plans for government workers, such as teachers and nurses, are also under attack, as I've reported on in the past, often by handing over administration of pension plans to management companies with a proven track record of incompetence, such as the move by Jason Kenney's Alberta government to hand over management of the formerly very well-run Alberta Teachers Pension Plan to AIMCO, or the Alberta Investment Management Corporation, a company with a proven track record of obscene losses in the billions of dollars. Or the Ontario Teachers Retirement Fund, which has already taken major hits as a result of mismanagement. And if you think that's a coincidence, then why does the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan have its own page on the World Economic Forum website? The green movement narrative gets crazier by the day. Recently, the UN released a study claiming that we're going to fall short of the Paris Agreement Accords of holding global temperature increase by the end of this century to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, ignoring the fact that man-made global warming is a complete myth. Myth. Did I say myth? I meant lie. It's a total lie. Anyway, the UN study claims that the situation is so critical that the only way we'll meet the made-up goals to address the imaginary problem is to, wait for it, reflect sunlight away from the Earth. The report proposes two options. First, seeding the upper atmosphere with reflective particles. I'll get back to that in a minute. The second one is even crazier. Space mirrors. I'm not making that up. The plan, which is being proposed under the scientific-sounding name of solar radiation modification, proposes spending $20 billion per year to create space mirrors that would reflect sunlight away from the Earth. This is based upon the suggestion floated last year by the WEF to build a raft of space bubbles roughly the size of Brazil. I couldn't resist. I had to do the math on that. I based my calculations upon past proposals by astrophysical engineers to create spaceships that could be propelled by solar sails, giant sheets of mylar that would be pushed by photons from the sun. Mylar has a weight of 1.4 metric tons per cubic meter. According to one NASA proposal from the 70s, a solar sail large enough to propel a spaceship would need to be 600,000 square meters in size. This translates to enough mylar to fill an 800-meter cube, or a cube with a volume of 512 million square meters. So a sail that size would weigh 716,800,000 metric tons. Stay with me. This gets fun. Brazil has an area of 9,826,675 square meters, or exactly 16.37 million times the size of the proposed NASA solar sail, the material for which would weigh 716.8 million metric tons. So how much would the material for this raft of space bubbles weigh? Well, that's simple to calculate now. It would be 16.37 million times 716 million. One online calculator I used for this gave me an answer of infinity, but that's not correct. The actual total is 1.17 e plus 16, or for those of you who don't speak math, 11 quintillion 600 quadrillion metric tons. So what's your point, Will? The SpaceX Falcon Heavy can carry a payload of 26.7 metric tons to geosynchronous orbit, which is where this giant bubble raft would need to be in order to block sunlight 24/7. So my point is that this plan would require over 400 quadrillion launches of the Falcon Heavy to lift that much Mylar into orbit. Even if we had the resources to do that, just the launches alone, if we assumed that we could launch one Falcon Heavy per day, which is ludicrous, by the way, it takes much longer than that to load, prep, and launch the rocket, then we would need over 400 quadrillion days, or a little over 1 trillion years, to launch that much material into high orbit. To put that amount of time into perspective, it's about 220 times the lifespan of our sun. But wait, what about the idea of reflective particles in the upper atmosphere that I mentioned at the beginning of this story? Same problem. To get any real amount of reflection from these particles, you would still need their combined surface area to be the size of an entire country. There's still no way to get that much material into the upper atmosphere and keep it there. Not before our solar system dies of old age, at least. Besides the obvious humor of this pseudo-scientific literal flight of fancy, here's my real point. I never studied advanced math or physics. So if I can do these calculations, then so can the folks at the WEF and the UN, which means they know it's BS, which means they know that man-made global warming is BS, and this is just another propaganda tool to manipulate the gullible masses. Fortunately, their lies are becoming so transparent, anyone with an ounce of skepticism can see through them. If you remember my report last October on former global warming alarmist Tom Harris, who saw the truth and was briefly interviewed on Fox News after publicly stating that climate alarmism is a scam, well, Mr. Harris, who has a master's degree in mechanical engineering with specialization in thermodynamics and fluid mechanics, and worked as an engineer for the National Research Council, now has a website where he is working to debunk global warming. I interviewed Mr. Harris this week. That interview will be released soon, so you can share it with anyone you know who is still buying this load of utter space junk. Last summer, I regretfully had to pull the plug on That Friday Show, our bi-weekly satirical news show, due to the extreme time commitment involved in producing it. While I don't know if or ever That Friday Show will return, I am resurrecting one segment from it, our hero of the week. This week's hero is the unnamed and hopefully forever anonymous brave soul at CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, who is feeding information to reporter Sam Cooper at the Globe and Mail. Due to this courageous and upstanding Canadian, we know about Chinese government interference in the 2019 election. The CSIS source or sources told Cooper that during the 2019 Liberal nomination meeting, the Chinese consulate in Toronto arranged for 2 buses of Chinese Canadian seniors to attend the event. The seniors were told to vote for Han Dong to be the candidate by having his name written on their arms. Chinese international students were also equipped with fake residence addresses and sent to the nomination meeting in support of Dong under the pretense that not doing so could threaten their student visa status. Turd's office responded, "As you are aware, we are unable to comment on your questions regarding secret or top secret matters. That is the law. There are so many factual inaccuracies in your questions that it's not possible to even begin to answer your questions." So many inaccuracies apparently that they're not able to provide proof of a single one of them. And of course, that couldn't have anything to do with the $1 million donated to Turd's political campaign by a Chinese billionaire under orders from the Chinese government. We know about this from an unnamed national security source, according to the Globe and Mail article published on Wednesday. You want to bet it's the same source feeding information to Sam Cooper? The source revealed that a Chinese billionaire was instructed by Beijing to donate $1 million to the Trudeau Foundation in 2014, the year before the Liberals came to power under Trudeau. The report says that he and a second wealthy Chinese businessman donated $1 million in honor of the elder Trudeau in 2016, including $200,000 to the foundation. Pascal Fournier, the president and CEO of the Trudeau Foundation, who claims that the Prime Minister has not been involved with the foundation since becoming leader, says the $200,000 has been refunded. So what about the other $800,000? Whoever you are at CSIS, keep up the good work. That's all for this week's free version of the Iron War Report. In the members version, further frightening amendments to the WHO International Health Treaty, an exclusive report on paramedic deaths in Canada from the vaccines, Brazil's new president is passing legislation that would sentence the unvaxxed to prison, a victory in the Canadian courts for a father fighting to protect his 3 children from the toxic shots. The University of Ottawa becomes the latest to fight racial discrimination with racial discrimination. Busty Lemieux's story gets even weirder. And Woody Harrelson's Saturday Night Live monologue that had the Washington Post and other state-controlled American media throwing fits. Interviews coming up next week. Database and electronics expert Martin McDermott reveals $300 million a year in title fraud in Ontario and how the Terranet private land registry database is being manipulated to steal property from the vulnerable. And Carrie Simpson of the Canadian Voters Association discusses Bill C-27, the most dangerous bill yet, the legal roadmap to engaging digital ID, digital currency, and 2030 controls on speech, travel, state compliance, and forced adherence to the UN's sustainable goals. All of this is available with a member subscription at ironwarreport.com for just $9.95 per month with a 15-day free trial. Cancel anytime in the first 15 days and you will not be charged.